Hello and welcome to Studio RC, an encouragement for your recovery and your faith. My name is Max, and I am an alcoholic, and I am a follower of Jesus. This will kick off a new series. I know we're interrupting a previous series, but this will start off this episode with a review of our national conference that just happened. The Recovery Church Movement Conference just took place in Asheville, North Carolina at the Ridgecrest Retreat Center. And I had the opportunity to interview many of the main speakers and main contributors to the conference as well as to our movement. So I'm going to kick off our series with actually the person who spoke last at the conference, but deserves top billing, and that is our CEO, founder, and that's Pastor Phil Dvorak. I'm going to start out with a little tribute that I gave him before he spoke on the last day on Sunday. And as part of my introduction, I gave a little brief tribute to Pastor Phil, and I've included that in this episode. And then we'll go right into an interview with Pastor Phil. His talk, as well as his interview, was very poignant, very touching, and it is my hope that you'll get that from both the interview and the opportunity to just sort of experience a little bit of the conference. So let's jump right in, first with my tribute and then with my interview for Pastor Phil.
At Recovery Church, we have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to gifting. And the beautiful thing is we complement one another. And what is even a bigger honor is I get to set it up for Pastor Phil. And he's going to slam it down in the next talk. And I am so appreciative that Pastor Phil is a Dr. Bob and not a Bill W. He is such a faithful man. We are where we are because we didn't have a promoter. Many of us in leadership, if we were the number one person, it would have looked different. We have a humble servant leader. A guy, give it up. We have a CEO and founder who work the merch table. He picks up trash. I am humbled by him. Let me pray. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
All right, I want to welcome Pastor Phil, our founder, into the studio here at the conference. I'm very excited to have this opportunity to speak with him. And just maybe some people don't know who you are. And give us your name and sort of what you do, which is a lot. But
my name is Phil. I'm a part of the team for Recovery Church Movement. Probably about a decade ago, the first Recovery Church was birthed, and we had no idea what we were doing. We just knew too many people were dying without knowing Jesus and having a path to recovery. And so we said, hey, let's try to figure something out. And we started a little service in Lake Worth, and it exploded in a good way. And we just started seeing people fall in love with Jesus and find a path of recovery, and families restored, and lives changed, and eternity changed. And we've just been building the plane as we've been flying since. And so we went from that one little location to 3, and then 18 going into the pandemic, and now we're pretty close to 100 locations. So.
It's pretty awesome. I am always amazed at your story and how you came about. And we have the book, His Story, that kind of explains how you were called and God kept prompting you, which is a special story. I'm going to share a story of how I got to know you. I came to a pastor's breakfast. Well, you came to a pastor's breakfast in New Jersey. And I'll be honest, I kind of came with folded arms, like, what's this guy got to talk about? Recovery Church, let's see. And, by the end of our time, I was already answering questions on your behalf because we were in such lockstep. because we saw recovery in such a similar way.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I felt fully, both in my faith and in recovery, I felt fully myself. And I hear that again and again from people in Recovery Church. So I thank you that I've been able to be a part of, and that God has given you this vehicle that we get to go alongside of you as we do this. So it's been a really neat thing. So before we get into your message, let's talk about what are you experiencing so far at this conference? I mean, you have come from a conference of 12 people to start out with. I missed that one, but then the next one had we had 18 to 25-ish?
Something like that. Yeah, it was small.
From there to here, what do you think of the 300 people worshiping and buying merchandise that says Recovery Church and doing all sorts of things? What do you take of all this?
I'm just humbled. I just see what God is doing, because I know we didn't do it, and it's like a family reunion. And my message I share something in the communion service that we have earlier. I talked earlier about a wedding and how we're the bride of Christ, and but this is a family, and there's just something special about when your family gathers. You fight with each other, you argue with each other, you love on each other, you miss each other. You haven't seen each other in a little while, and some are a little fatter, some are a little skinnier, some are a little older. But you just want to grab each other's neck, give each other a hug, and just, it's family.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I was leading one of the breakout sessions with the new campus launches.
Yeah.
And I said, we would not be where we are without you and without your leadership. And I know that you often kind of deflect that. But I think that it's your humility and your meekness in a very holy way, that you're more of a Dr. Bob than a Bill W. And if we had had a Bill W. promoter, I don't know where we'd be. You have never let the growth that you've talked about ever go to your head, and they're consequently funneled down to the staff to go to any of our heads. And I think that that's part of the secret sauce of Recovery Church. And so I think that it's seen again and again. And for those who haven't been at the conference, you and your family working at the merch table, just picking up trash, just doing the little things that clearly you don't have to do, but that you do, and that you model for your children as well as the team and as well as the staff, and providing excellence with what we have. That is what you've preached from the beginning, and we work hard on it. This conference, for those who weren't here, so professionally done, looks great. We did it on a shoestring, and with a lot of hard work from a relatively small group of people.
No, absolutely.
But I'm always blown away at how much all these pieces together, there is synergy that produces what we experience. And so, and that comes from your leadership, even though you don't want to talk about that. So we'll keep going. In your message to the conference, what's the focal point? What's the main point of what you hope people take away from the message?
So the whole conference has been about the ship. That discipleship is the vehicle. It's the ship that we're going to accomplish the vision that God has given us for Recovery Church. But my message is that really behind all of that is stewardship. Behind all of that is that it's all His. When we approach things that my children, yes, they're my biological children, but they're not my children, they're His. When I lose it on them because I've been short and stressed and life has been hard, or traveling or working hard, and then they're being kids and things aren't clean, and or whatever, or they break something or damage something, I'm speaking to a son or a daughter of the King. And that changes everything. When I realize that I've been given this great gift of salvation and this great gift of recovery, And if I just bury that in the sand, if I just cover that up, how much do I have to hate people? It's all about stewardship. It's not, it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to him. And I'm nothing more than a manager. I'm nothing more than, and so if I lose it on my wife, she's the daughter of the king that I just talked that way to. And just for us in recovery, man, how much we have to hate someone to not share what God has done in our life. And it's all about stewardship. It's all about taking this little that he's given us, which is not so little, and how do we use that for his glory? Because it doesn't belong to us. And what's great about God is he is the God of the cattle on 1,000 hills. He's not limited. And so we can never outgive him. We can never out-sacrifice for him. We can never it's his. And so the challenge to this group is sometimes we look around, oh, we're just a bunch of addicts or alcoholics, or people throw $1 in the basket. And I'm not talking about money when I'm saying stewardship, but there are more resources and gifts and talents and abilities and finances, but there's just to change this world than we give ourselves credit for. And Jesus said, we're going to do greater things. And you think about that, and sometimes we live with this scarcity and this just weak faith. But when Jesus was like, no, you're going to do greater things than me. Holy smokes. But he's entrusting that to us. And there's so much talent. There's so much opportunity. There's so much restoration and transformation and power in that room that I really believe that God could use it to change this world.
Well, and I think that God is, and we think about, we have, I think, 90 locations. Studio RC has been seen on 7 different continents, only Antarctica. We're working on that. We are the ability for our message to go further. We are standing on the shoulders of Jesus.
Amen.
And we have the ability, again, with technology and other things, to have a greater reach. Not that we're greater than Jesus by any means.
No.
But he set us up to win. He set us up to expand.
Well, and that's his model. I mean, his model, there's nothing wrong with mega church, and there's sick little churches and there's sick big churches, so it's not about size. But his model wasn't necessarily for us to build these big kingdoms. His model was for us to love on our neighbor. His model was go make disciples. His model was to pour into the one who pours into the one who pours into the one, and we see multiplication and if we just went and made disciples the way he said to go make disciples, the Great Commission would have been fulfilled a long time ago. But we want an easier, softer way. We don't want to work the steps. We don't want to listen to a sponsor. We don't want to read his word. And so being willing to just keep it simple, it doesn't have to be complicated. I think God's honoring that, us as a community, where it's not, we still have that raw value. Yeah, we have great signs and we have some other things and we're growing, but there's still people who are at the conference who, might be 30 days sober, and people who might be 40. There's people who are celebrating 40 years sober, or in recovery, and everything in between. But we don't have to complicate it.
As you think about your message, what was the most challenging part for the message for you personally, and that might have challenged you the most?
Well, as you know, my father passed away less than a week ago. And I shared parts of that in my message. He was not. He was a good man of the world, a hard-working man, a man who wanted to provide for his children, his family, but that became his God. The idea of leaving a financial legacy, the idea of wealth, but not necessarily for his. I mean, the guy never bought a new pair of underwear or a new shirt. He was as frugal gets. That's a nice way of putting it. I think he'd be okay with me saying he's cheap. I think he would smile because of that. But in the last few years, and not that it was I don't want to put the impression that it was a bedside confession. Not that those are bad things. Those are valid. Those are good. But in the last, I'd say 3-4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, he's really started to lean into his faith and grow in his faith. And in the last couple of years, we knew his time was less ahead than behind. Yeah, we knew he wasn't buying green bananas. We knew that he had leukemia. We knew that most likely that he was going to have a relapse of the cancer. And then once that happened, he wasn't going to have a long amount of time, that there was only so much that the chemo could do. But every time we would gather over the last couple of years with his cancer, we would gather together. Beforehand, he would ask me, and we'd talk about him sharing his newfound faith. And every time he would chicken out. Every time we'd gather, he just wasn't willing to do that. And so Thursday, I picked him up from the Mayo Clinic. My brother and I picked him up from the Mayo Clinic, the hospital, and brought him home. And he had made the decision to no longer do chemo. And then on Saturday, he had passed away. We weren't expecting it to be quite that fast. But on Friday, so Thursday evening, we brought him home. On Friday, we had all of his grandkids, all of his children, and their spouses. So 20-some people gathered in his bedroom, in his condo, and asking all sorts of silly questions. He talked about how he met my mother at a McDonald's, or actually the Big M, the original McDonald's, and telling all sorts of silly stories, and it was good stuff. And we have a very silly, dark humor, and my family, and some just kind of having fun. But my wife Sarah asked him a couple questions that were good questions that got him moving in the right direction. And finally, I cornered him, and I just said, "Dad, you're about to go to sleep, and I'm about to let you go to sleep, and all these people are going to leave. Is there anything you want to tell them about your faith?" So I cornered him, and he spent at least a couple hours, and we have him on video, of just sharing that the money. He starts talking about Egyptians and how they can't take their gold with them, and how none of that matter, that the most important thing that matters now is that his grandkids and his kids all know Jesus. That was the most important thing for him to steward. That was the most valuable thing for him. And so just sharing that intimacy with the group this close, the death would have been the hardest. But it's also who we are. We're real, we're raw, we're family. I'm not going to get up there and not share where I'm really at and not be honest of where I'm at. So we're not going to have the bright white smiles and the polished suit and the everything perfect as an organization. Hey, I'm going through some hard time. You guys are going to hear that as well. So,
well, one, I thank you for sharing in this with us and sharing in your message and being so vulnerable. We appreciate that, and our prayers have been with you, and we appreciate that you're here.
Absolutely.
I think that it would not be the same without you, and you probably roll your eyes and say, "Yeah, okay," but it's so we so appreciate and are so thankful that you're here, and we continue to pray for you and your family.
Thank you.
As we start to just land the plane here, what encouragement would you offer to someone listening who may be struggling with relapse or struggling with their walk of faith? What would you say to someone who's struggling right now to encourage them?
There's never going to be a good time. There's never going to be a good moment. Don't try to clean yourself up. Just come to Jesus. If you're waiting for the right moment, if you're waiting for the right opportunity, or for, it's not coming. The time is now. Where no one is promised tomorrow. It's but a breath. Life is but a mist. And if you're not sure where you are on your relationship with Jesus, and if you know where you are, if there's just even a chance you think you might be an alcoholic or an addict, it's time to draw into a community like Recovery Church. It's time to go to an AA meeting, an NA meeting. It's time to draw into a fellowship that's going to be able to walk alongside you. And I would encourage you to be a part of Recovery Church. Just the ultimate questions about Jesus, the ultimate questions about eternity. I would hate for someone to not have security, to not have, to not know what they know about that, to not have come to a solid conclusion, a solid place of faith. I would just encourage you that there are thousands of people who have a new, wonderful life that were in the exact same shoes as you at one point.
All right, well, I thank you for that. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way? To go to the website and email you? Or?
The website is probably the easiest. You go on there. The numbers on all our stuff is our office number. It rings in the office, which is a shed in our backyard, and we're there most 9 to 5, most days of the week, and then if not, we're checking those messages on a regular basis, and that rings right to my desk, and so that's the easiest. Yeah.
Okay. All right, last question to close us down. Can you share a favorite life scripture or quote or something that really is meaningful to you? And
it's a section of scripture that saved my life, and I would never recommend it to someone who was suicidal. Never recommend it to someone who was struggling, but Ecclesiastes, and part of it is even the journey with my father. I'd go into his house, and he had a Bible on a stand when I was coming to faith, and the Bible was on a nice stand. Those big family Bibles that have the gold leaf on the side, and they're big and huge. And my father was living in a very nice neighborhood at the time, and he had a nice rug when you entered into the house, and had all those long tassels on them. And he had a little rake. He was OCD, a rake, and he would comb them all perfectly straight on each side. And when I would leave the house, I would always kick those tassels, just a little defiance. But I'd also, in my own defiance, I would turn the book to Ecclesiastes, and it would say, meaningless, 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 chasing after the wind. Riches are meaningless, utterly meaningless. That everything without God is utterly meaningless. It's a chasing after the wind. And for years, I would return home, and they never looked at the Bible. It was just sitting there on that stand, on that same verse, whenever I'd come and go. Until very recently in his journey, his desire to grow in faith with Jesus had changed drastically. But in my own darkest moments, I needed to be reminded that none of it matters without God. That the focus on Him, the focus on, because I had to step away from things in life. I had to step away from opportunities, from the family business, the opportunities there. Because there was a call in my life and I believe it's not my call in my life. The assignment might be different, but the call is not. A call for us to surrender our all to Jesus, and just knowing that outside of that, it's utterly meaningless. That we're called. The call of a Christian is a bid to come and die, and that we're supposed to die to self daily. And so for me, the book of Ecclesiastes, that is just utterly meaningless without God, is probably my favorite section of Scripture.
I thank you. I thank you for our time. I thank you for all that you do for Recovery Church and how you have led us. Thank you to the founder of Recovery Church, and God bless.
God bless.
Thank
I love you, Max.
Thank you. All right.